Hi everyone, welcome back to KG Graves. We're in Putneyvale Cemetery in London and we're here today to visit the grave of Greglake, who was part of the band Emerson, Palmer, had that hit Fanfare for the Common Man. He also had a hit on his own with I Believe in Father Christmas. More information coming up about Greg. Hope you enjoy the video.
They said there'll be snow at Christmas. They said there'll be peace on earth. But instead it just kept on raining, a veil of tears for the virgin birth. I remember one Christmas morning, a winter's light and a distant choir, and the peal of a bell and that Christmas tree smell, and eyes full of tinsel and fire. They sold me a dream of Christmas. They sold me a silent night. They told me a fairy story till I believed in the Israelite. And I believed in Father Christmas. And I looked to the sky with excited eyes. Then I woke with a yawn in the first light of dawn. I saw him in through his disguise.
Greglake was born Gregory Stewart Lake on the 10th of November 1947 in Poole, Dorset, to parents Harry and Pearl. He was an English musician, singer and songwriter. He was born into a very poor family, but credits his parents for sending him money and food during his time as a struggling musician. Greg discovered rock and roll in 1957 when he bought Little Richard's Lucille. At the age of 12, he first learned to play the guitar and wrote his first song, Lucky Man, which he didn't write down, simply committing it to memory. He named his mother, a pianist, as his initial musical influence, and she bought him a second-hand guitar to learn on. Greg then took guitar lessons from Don Strike, who had a shop in Westbourne. He said, Don Strike taught him these awful Burt Weedon things, reading musical notation exercises with violin pieces by Niccolo Paganini and playing 1930s pop tunes, the latter of which became an influence on him at the time. After roughly 1 year with Strike, Greg ended his tuition as he wished to learn songs by The Shadows, a favourite band of his, but Strike wouldn't have any of it. Greg's second guitar was a pink Fender Stratocaster. He attended Oakdale Junior School, followed by Henry Harbin Secondary Modern School, and left the latter in 1963 or 64. He then took up work loading and unloading cargo at the Poole docks and as a draftsman for a short period. Greg then decided to become a full-time musician at the age of 17. He joined his first band, Unit 4, playing cover songs as their singer and guitarist. Following their split in 1965, Greg and Unit 4 bassist Dave Jeans formed another covers group, the time checks until 1966. He then became a member of The Shame, where he is featured on their single Don't Go Away Little Girl, written by Janice Ian. During his stay in Carlisle for a gig, Greg contracted pneumonia and continued to perform on stage. His bandmates refused to drive back home that night, leaving him to sleep in the van, where he woke up blue. When we got home, I was nearly dead. That was probably the worst I went through. Following a brief stint in the Shy Limbs, by 1968 Greg was involved with the Gods, who secured a residency at the Marquee Club in London. Greg left the group in 1968 over creative differences, as the band were to enter the recording studio. Their keyboardist, Ken Hensley, later said that Greg was far too talented to be kept in the background. In the 1960s, Greg formed a friendship with guitarist Robert Fripp, who would form and lead King Crimson in 1968. Michael Giles was the drummer and Ian MacDonald joined on the keyboards, flute and saxophone. Peter Giles was the vocalist-bassist, but left the group and was replaced by Greg. This was his first time playing bass guitar, although he had primarily been a guitarist for 11 years. Peter Sinfield was the band's primary lyricist, with Greg contributing some of the lyrics for their debut album, In the Court of King Crimson. After their contracted producer Tony Clark walked away from the project, Greg also produced the album. Released in October 1969, the album was an immediate commercial and critical success. He recalled, "There was this huge wave of response. The audiences were really into us because we were an underground thing. The critics loved us because we offered something fresh." King Crimson toured the UK and the US, with some of the shows featuring rock band The Nice as the opening act. In San Francisco during the US tour, Greg struck up a friendship with the Nice keyboardist Keith Emerson. The two shared similar musical interests, were ready to leave their respective bands, and talked about the benefits of their forming a new group together. When King Crimson returned to the UK in early 1970, Greg agreed to sing on the band's second album, In the Wake of Poseidon, and appear on the music television show Top of the Pops with them, performing the song Cat Food. In April 1970, Greg left King Crimson and joined with Keith Emerson and drummer Carl Palmer of The Crazy World of Arthur Brown and Atomic Rooster to form the progressive rock supergroup ELP, Emerson, Lake and Palmer. Greg began with a Fender bass guitar before he switched to a Gibson Ripper. He also contributed some work on acoustic and electric guitar, and his voice had a wider range and a more diverse range than anything the Nice had previously recorded. Emerson, Lake and Palmer became one of the most successful groups in the 1970s. Greg became known for performing on an expensive Persian carpet on stage, sometimes criticised as being one of the band's lavish, egocentric stage pieces. He stated that it served a practical purpose. It covered a rubber mat he stood on at his microphone to address his fear of electrocution after he received an electric shock from a microphone on stage. Emerson, Lake and Palmer conflicted between Keith's interest in complex classical influenced music and Greg's more straightforward rock tastes. He complained that Keith chose to play in keys that were not a good fit for his voice. In 1974, Emerson, Lake and Palmer took a break in activity. Greg used this time to focus on his family life, travel, and to write and release music. By then, the band were tax exiles and relocated to Switzerland, France, Canada, and the Bahamas, as they were restricted to 2-month stay in England a year. In March 1977, the band released Works Volume 1, a double album with each member of the group getting one side of an album for his solo music and the fourth side for the group to work together. Greg released a single from the album, C'est la vie, He called the album the beginning of the end of the band, as he stopped producing their albums, neither of which were a really innovative record. In November 1977, the band released Works Volume 2. The band split up in 1979 following the unsuccessful album Love Beach, which the group were contractually obliged to record. The group reformed for a number of years in the mid-1990s and released 2 albums, Black Moon in 1992 and In the Hot Seat in 1994, before permanently disbanding, except for one reunion concert in 2010 at London's High Voltage Festival. In 1975, while still a member of ELP, when they were on a hiatus, Greg achieved solo chart success when his single I Believe in Father Christmas reached number 2 on the UK singles chart. It has become a Yuletide perennial. In the UK, the single sold over 13,000 copies in 2 days. Several months following the breakup of ELP in 1979, Greg began to write new songs and had put down a tremendous amount of material for his first solo album. He travelled to Los Angeles and worked with a group of session musicians and formed the Greglake Band. The result, Greglake, was released in September 1981 on Chrysalis Records and reached number 62 in both the UK and the US. The debut concert for the tour of the album took place in August 1981 at the Reading Festival, with bandmates Gary Moore on guitar, Ted McKenna on drums, Tony Eyre on keyboards, and Tristram Margetts on bass. A concert at the Hammersmith Odeon during the tour in 1981, broadcast live on the King Biscuit Flower Hour, was released as a live album in 1995. Greg's second solo album, Manoeuvres, was released in July 1983. He disbanded the Greglake Band soon after completing it, without promoting or touring the album, and split with his record company. In October 1983, at Carl Palmer's request, he briefly joined in the 1980s supergroup Asia to replace fellow King Crimson alumnus John Wetton for 4 scheduled concerts in Japan. Greg agreed and spent 6 weeks learning Asia's songs, culminating in his performance in the Asia in Asia concert at the Nippon Budokan Hall in Tokyo on the 6th of December 1983, the first concert broadcast over satellite to MTV in the United States, and later made it into a home video. Greg left the group after the tour, having joined as a favour for the Japanese concerts only. In 1986, Greg and Keith Emerson decided to reform Emerson, Lake and Palmer to record another album. However, Carl Palmer continued to have commitments to Asia, so they auditioned for other artists. They found good rapport with drummer Cozy Powell and recorded their eponymous album Emerson, Lake and Powell with him. In 2001, Greg toured as a member of the 7th incarnation of Ringo Starr and his all-star band. In 2005, Greg toured Germany and the UK with his group, the Greglake Band, but the shows were not a sellout and the US leg was cancelled. In 2006, Greg played as a member of the supergroup, the RD Crusaders, in aid of charity. He performed Can't Evil 9 with the Trans-Siberian Orchestra at several shows. He was a special guest on their album Night Castle 2009. In 2010, Greg and Keith Emerson completed an acoustic world tour performing ELP songs. The tour got off to a bad start following a backstage altercation between the two, but we completed the tour and it was very happy. We actually ended up enjoying ourselves. That July, Greg joined Keith Emerson and Carl Palmer for a one-off gig at the High Voltage Festival in Victoria Park, London, to commemorate the band's 40th anniversary. The concert was released on CD, DVD and Blu-ray as High Voltage. It was the final performance by the group. Greg wished to continue the touring, but claimed his bandmates didn't want to, thus ending such plans. Greg continued to tour solo in the 2010s. His Songs of a Lifetime tour began in 2012, which featured songs of his career and those by his favourite artists, including Elvis Presley and Johnny Kidd and the Pirates. The tour ended in December of that year and produced the live albums Songs of a Lifetime 2013 and Live in Piacenza 2017. Greg spent several years writing his autobiography, Lucky Man, originally planned to be published in 2012 but eventually released posthumously in June 2017. In his final years he worked on producing the album Moonchild by Annie Barbeza and Max Ripetti, where some of the most iconic songs were arranged in an avant-garde, contemporary mood for only piano and voice. In his personal life, in late 1974, Greg moved from a flat in Cornwall Gardens in Kensington, London, to a home near Windsor. He later lived in the Kingston and Richmond areas of Greater London with his wife Regina. The couple had one daughter, Natasha. Greg was an accomplished angler who developed a friendship with television presenter Jack Hargreaves, appearing as a result in the 1980 episode of Out of Town, Hargreaves' programme about country life for Southern Television. Greg died in London at the age of 69 on the 7th of December 2016 after suffering from pancreatic cancer. His manager described his illness as long and stubborn. Numerous fellow musicians paid tribute, including Rick Wakeman and Steve Hackett, Ringo Starr, John Wetton, Ian Anderson and Carl Palmer, among others. Greg's death occurred 9 months after the death of ELP keyboardist Keith Emerson. Across the many bands Greg was with, he featured on 48 albums between 1967 and 2017. My favourite track was by ELP, the single Fanfare for the Common Man, released in 1977 and reached number 2 in the UK chart. Here's a clip from the track. Let's see where his grave is located.
So there you have it, the grave of Greglake. As usual, if you like the video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Thanks for watching, see you on the next one.
Rest in peace, Greglake.